Good afternoon. My name's Tom Connolly, editor of Legal Cheek, and a very warm welcome to this virtual event, which is titled SQE Success Strategies, Tailoring Prep to Your Individual Needs. And this virtual event is in partnership with BARBRI. Now, all of you out there, presumably aspiring solicitors, are faced with a range of challenges in your journey towards qualification, with one major hurdle being, of course, the SQE. Now, whether you're a student or a graduate, today's panel, which features a legal education expert, qualified solicitor who's successfully completed the SQE, and a current trainee who's currently in the thick of the process, are here to help you make the right decisions as you embark on this major step in your legal careers. Now, over the course of the next hour, the panel will cover a range of important topics, including assessment structure, so what actually is the SQE, qualifying work experience, or QWE as you might know it as, flexible scheduling, accommodations for specific needs, and of course other hot topics like mental health and wellbeing support throughout your SQE journey. And of course, following the discussion, there'll be an opportunity to network with some of this afternoon's speakers. Now, unlike normal, I'm not going to be chairing this session. I'm delighted I'm going to be handing over to Emily Allen, who's a senior SQE1 tutor at BARBRI, who's going to run this afternoon's session. So delighted that I'll hand over to you, Emily, now, and I'll see you back here at 5 o'clock for the networking.
Thank you very much, Tom, and thank you for the introduction. So in today's session, what we're going to do is we're going to go through a number of strategies to help you tailor your prep for your individual needs. And I am delighted that I am joined by three extremely well-informed ladies who will be able to help advise and guide you on this topic. So I'll start by introducing myself, and then I'll ask you all to introduce yourselves as well. As Tom mentioned, I am an educator. I work with BARBRI. I'm a senior tutor there, and I head up the SQE1 program. So I've helped design the course, and now my everyday work is guiding candidates through their journey to get through this SQE exam. I'm joined by Narissa. Narissa, could you perhaps introduce yourself first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Narissa. I currently work at BARBRI for the past 2 years. I'm a legal educational consultant and currently doing the SQE1 40-week course starting on Monday.
Fantastic. So Narissa and I are going to give you kind of the facts and figures that you might want to know about SQE. But I think it's fair to say that the two guests of honour today are those that have actually been through the process. So I'm joined by Elisheva, first of all. Elisheva, could you perhaps tell us a little bit about your background, how you came to do SQE and what your current position is as well?
Yeah, sure. My name is Elisheva, and I started my career journey with a non-law degree. So I studied English for 3 years, then I did a law conversion, and then I studied the SQE1 with BARBRI, and I passed on my first attempt. I just got my results a few weeks ago. And I've just started as a trainee solicitor at Farrer & Co. And I am also studying towards my SQE2, which I'll take in October and November of this year.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And then Katerina, you also are the voice of experience here. Can you please tell us about your journey through SQE?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the question. So I'm from a little bit classical legal background. Although I graduated with a degree in law from the Belarusian State University, I studied in Belarus, which is a small country in CIS. And then I moved to the UK to study LLM in intellectual property law from the University College London. And then after a couple of years of working in a law firm, which actually like 6 years, I decided to do SQE, and I did SQE1 in July last year and SQE2 this March. I received results in August recently, and I already have a practicing certificate, so I applied straight after I completed both at first attempt as well.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And of course, many congratulations to both of you for having got through your SQE exams. That's fantastic. So let's just turn briefly to what's coming up. What we're going to do then is we are going to talk, first of all, about the path to qualification. I'm going to explain to you exactly what this SQE route is and what you will need, and also perhaps flag to you some of the individual needs and considerations that you might want to factor in when you decide what journey you might want to take through SQE and what is going to work best for you. That will only be a brief introduction. Then I'm going to come back to Elisheva and Katerina and ask you to share your experiences in much more detail. I think you are, as the voice of experience, are going to be the thing that people most want to hear from. And then last but not least, I'm going to come to Nerissa, who can talk about how you can personalise your prep with BARBRI if you do decide that you want to go down that route, and how our courses work, how you can sign up for them. We will have time at the end for some Q&A as well. So if you do have any questions for any of the panelists, then do post them in the chat at that point. All right, but let's have a look at this SQE route, path to qualification, and consider what it is exactly that we are talking about. So the new SQE route, I call it new, it's been going since 2021. It enables candidates to qualify by completing 4 steps. 2 of the steps are sitting exams, SQE1 and SQE2. And then there are 2 additional requirements. You must have a degree and you must satisfy the character and suitability requirements of SQE, and you must have some qualifying work experience. So this is very different to the old route. And I think the most exciting part about SQE as a route to qualification is that it opens up what qualifies as qualifying work experience. So under the old route, you would have to get a training contract, and that could make it quite difficult for many candidates to qualify as a solicitor. Very competitive to secure a training contract. Under the new route, there are many, many different things that could qualify as qualifying work experience. It could be doing pro bono work. It could be working in a legal department. It no longer has to be limited to that training contract structure. In addition to that, though, you've got to do 2 big exams. SQE1, which is the knowledge part of the exam, where they test your knowledge across 16 different modules, across what they call functioning legal knowledge. It's a huge syllabus covering all of the core modules of a law degree and the core modules of what used to be the LPC as well. This exam is sat over 2 days. So you have 1 day of assessment on half of the syllabus and then another on the other half, with 180 questions on each day. So that amounts to 5 or more than 5 hours of examination per day. Add it up, you've got 360 questions over more than 10 hours of assessment across many, many modules. It's a real beast of an exam. That's SQE1. SQE2, we'll ask Katerina in a moment what she thought of it, but it's I'd say it's no easier. It is the skills part of the exam. And instead of doing this big knowledge test, you're doing 16 individual skills tests across 6 different skills. So you have to do a bit of interviewing, some advocacy, some legal writing, still across a broad syllabus, not quite as big as SQE1. And you'll get half of your mark from the skills and half from the law on which you're being examined. So there's a lot of examination that you have to get through. In addition to that, you have to have a degree. That degree could be in any discipline, doesn't have to be law. It could be an overseas degree as well, doesn't have to be a UK degree, as long as it's equivalent. And you could get your degree before, after, or during doing these SQE exams. There's no order in which you have to do these things. Likewise, you could get your qualifying work experience before you sit the exams if you so choose. The only order that is set is that you must sit and pass SQE1 before you are eligible to sit SQE2. So you have to have learnt the law before you can then do the skills test. Okay, so it's a big exam. There's lots of flexibility. That means that candidates have scope to consider their individual needs and their considerations in a lot more detail, perhaps, than was previously possible under the old route. And in fact, with BARBRI students, in our survey, 35% of our students indicate that they had individual learning needs that are different to other candidates. So I suppose the first question for anyone thinking about getting ready for SQE is to think about, what are my individual needs and requirements in terms of how I can prep and how I can sit this exam. And the kind of things that you might want to think about are time, for example. So if we move on to the next slide, you'll see time. Many of our students have a lot of competing obligations. You've just heard that Lishava is doing her training contract while she's also getting ready for SQE2. Trying to balance work and study can be really, really tough. Many of our students have family and caring responsibilities as well, or other commitments that mean that they cannot spend all day, every day studying. So think carefully about what your limitations are in terms of the time that you have available to study. Next, you might want to think about your learning needs. So thinking about what works for you. Are you able to travel to a centre and have face-to-face contact, or is that going to be too demanding in terms of time commitment? Do you need any particular accommodations? What is your learning style? What works best for you? Some of us are more audio learners, others prefer to read. So thinking about your own strengths and weaknesses in terms of how you study is also really important in thinking about what kind of course might help you get ready for this exam. And finally, think very carefully about well-being when you're thinking about your SQE journey. It's not to be underestimated what a challenge this exam is. It is a big, big challenge, both in terms of the law that you need to learn, but also the challenge to your well-being as well. And so preparing for that and making sure that you're well equipped to face this big challenge is really important as well. So of course, BARBRI have got lots of support available for their students to help them along the way, learning coaches such as myself being one of them, but think carefully about the support that you might need in terms of your mental health, also in terms of support and funding. Do you need any reasonable adjustments? And think about the financial support as well, because although this new route is supposed to be cheaper and therefore also more accessible, it's still a big investment of money as well. So think about how you're going to fund this and what kind of options might work for you. All right, well, I've outlined some of the challenges that you might want to think about before embarking on SQE. I think that's a really good time to perhaps stop looking at the slides and hand over or start asking some questions of our two key panelists today. So Elisheva and Katsiarina, I'd love to hear from you in a bit more detail about your experiences. So I'm going to ask you some questions about how you experienced your SQE journey. So perhaps a good starting point, obviously you're both BARBRI graduates, a good starting point might be to ask you about your SQE1 journey and ask, what course did you choose? I've just talked about how you need to be careful about what you opt for. So what course length did you sign up for? And why did you choose that particular course? Why did it seem like a good option for you? And indeed, why any BARBRI course at all? Elisheva, I'll come to you first. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. So I chose the 40-week length course for SQE1, which was really good for me because I kind of went through a bit of a health struggle last year and I needed sort of a course length that would give me sort of enough time to prepare for the exams in line with also some health struggles I was facing. In terms of why I chose BARBRI, I'm quite a visual learner. And I really wanted a course that had a lot of videos, a lot of access to diagrams and flow charts. That's the way I learn the best. And that's something that BARBRI does quite uniquely and was really good for me. So the fact that everything is pre-recorded means you can watch over it as many times as you need. I loved the video demonstrations and all those kind of charts and that kind of diagrams, which was really helpful for me. And I also felt that the personal study coach was very unique. You kind of do need someone that, especially when you're going through such an intense exam, is able to look at how you're performing, because it's not an exam that you're taking with, in collaboration with anyone else. You're sitting the exam at the end of the day. So you really need a study coach to say, these are your scores, this is what you've done well, this is what you need to improve on, this is what you're on track for, and really give you that personalized feedback. And it just makes the whole experience a lot less lonely. You feel like someone's really there to go through it with you and give you some really personal advice. So that for me is why BARBRI was the right and the best choice.
Great. Okay, thank you. It's really interesting. So 40-week course. And Katsiarina, which course option did you go for?
I think I also went for a 40-week course.
Yeah.
And the reason is I wanted to give myself just a little bit more time, a little bit more flexibility, because it's a new thing. I was very worried, as I'm sure everyone else is, how am I going to manage this? I think I could have easily done shorter course, but there was no downside going for a 40-week course. And also what I really liked about SQE1 preparation with BARBRI is that you can structure your own time. And even if you opted in for 40 weeks course and then you feel that you're a little bit behind, I know some people started a little bit later, they were catching up on some things. If you're really focused, dedicate a couple of weekends, you will get back on track. I think this went absolutely perfect, because even within those 40 weeks, I was like, okay, in 20 weeks, I might go on holiday for 5 days. Then you can, the calendar in the SQE1 system allows you to book days, block days that you will not be studying, count some days out, count some days in. I really, really loved it from the perspective of organization. SQE1, and it's very different from SQE2. I will explain that later. But SQE1 was absolutely brilliant. And the quality of the teaching materials at BARBRI and the system without taking notes, that was very important for me. I am not a note taker. I never do that. I don't think it works from the brain memory side of things. And I think BARBRI is really heavy on the development of their learning system. And I was really, really impressed. As I mentioned a couple of times before, BARBRI follow their own study system. And I think the main goal for me was really dive in, trust it, and then see what happens. And what happened was good.
That's great to hear. So Katerina, on the 40-week course, just to clarify, were you working alongside at that point, or were you just studying?
I was working full time, and in the evenings I was studying. I also took a couple of days off. I didn't study every single day. And I think the system allows you to price those days off in. But also I was managing full-time job during the daytime, or like I can be a little bit flexible. I can study in the morning, work during the daytime, study in the evening again, take a break, rinse and repeat, and so on.
Brilliant. Yeah. And Elishava, same to you. You mentioned that you had some health issues, so you opted for the 40-week course. Were you doing anything alongside, or was it just the 40-week course?
I was doing just the 40-week course. I really needed to just do a little bit of a day, because that was what I was able to do at the time.
Yeah, great. And it fit into your life at that point.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more then about how you found the course. Katerina, I'm aware it might be a long time ago for you, because you've done SQE2 since then, you've moved on. But can you remember when you started SQE1, how did it feel? Did it match your expectations? Can you remember what surprised you? How did you find it in the beginning when you started on the course?
In the beginning, I really remember that well, as I'm sure everyone who went through this will. I was very excited because the quality of materials, the tutors at BARBRI, it really cheered me up. From the very, very beginning, you can tell that the lectures are set up in a way to educate you, but also in a certain way to entertain you. The certain examples that are used, like very cute types of businesses, like, as I'm sure, Elisha, you remember, like the cakes business that they put as an examples, it kind of relaxes your mind. So you don't sit there super stressed, shaking over some new terms. I think it gradually goes towards the building of your specialism in different areas of law, but still it was very, very entertaining and interesting. Even of course, when you start the course, you don't know how it's going to end, and I didn't know if I was going to pass or not, but I was like, okay, even if I don't, that was a very interesting piece of information. I know a lot about the life, especially like how the law functions in the UK. Even let's say I don't pass and I decide not to pursue this career anymore, that of course was in my mind, as I'm sure and everyone else, I was like, I still learned a lot. So I was grateful for this piece of course much.
Great. Okay, thank you. And Elishava, how did you find the course compared to, what you were expecting when you first started?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think I went into the SQE with a lot of dread and I was very afraid of it, especially hearing a lot of the negative press around it. But I really enjoyed it with BARBRI. I agree with Kat that there was a lot of like fun that BARBRI made with it. It was a lot of jokes, a lot of also just giving really good practical life examples that were in a way that you could remember it. So that was really, really useful. I also didn't expect that the study guides, so sort of those are like the workbooks that BARBRI give you with all the information, would be the length that they are, because they're quite smaller in comparison to other providers. And I know from friends who would have like 16 textbooks, and BARBRI give you one for FLK1 and one for FLK2. So it was really, really good to see that, you know what, even though there's so many modules and so much information, it actually can be condensed. And this is all you really do need to know in order to pass. So that was also something that was really surprising in a good way, and was very helpful for me.
Great. Okay, thank you. Now, you both did the 40-week course. It's long, I'd say. It's our longest course, almost a year. What do you think was the biggest challenge when you think about that period of time of study? Can you remember, did you have any difficult times? What was the toughest bit for you? Elishava, if I come back to you first.
Yes, totally. Yes, I think it's just it's the length of time, and it's to keep that motivation going for so long, especially if like your life circumstance isn't so great at the time for whatever reason. It's really hard to keep going. So I think that what really helped was meeting very often with my study coach and just chatting through whatever I was feeling and what was working well for me, what I needed to improve on. And I think the BARBRI's personalized study plan. So this is very unique to BARBRI, that it will work out what you need to do every day, and it's really manageable. So it would be like 2 or 3 tasks a day, and you would just say to yourself, I only have to do 2 or 3 things today. And then you kind of wouldn't feel guilty if you didn't do more than that, because you would know, 1 second, like I've done my task for today. I've done what I need to do. And that would just help you, because you would be able to see where you are on the whole list of things to do, and you knew exactly where you were, and you knew how much you had to go. So those things were really, really useful. And I also attended a lot of these strategy sessions. So just hearing from other students about how they were finding, motivating themselves, and hearing, picking up a hobby. I took on a lot of yoga and stuff like that. Just really helps you to like push yourself towards it. And remembering that like it does end. There is an end date. And it did always say whenever you logged in, like 274 days to the exam. That really like went by quite quickly. So there is a time where it comes, 1 day to the exam, and then it is all over. So yeah, those were I think the biggest challenges, just how long it is.
Great. Okay, thank you. And Katerina, can you remember what your biggest challenge was getting through SQE1?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think maybe building that into my life. And I just remembered, it was so long time, so long ago, I even had my wedding during the 40 weeks preparation course. I just remembered that for some reason, so I forgot. But it was during that time. So just if you're having like you are able to have a normal life, take time off, and juggle this course, as long as you still remain dedicated and to the end goal. And I saw a question in the chat, like if there is an access to all the materials at once for 40 weeks. Yes, it's possible to access it all. You can even like in your mind, maybe you're opting in for the 40-week course, but then you can do it in 30 weeks instead, or like you have lots of flexibility. So for me as well, it was staying mentally aware and dedicated. But as Alicia said, it does end. It feels surreal, but you have to, maybe for some period of your life, just to incorporate this in your life schedule. There will be some sacrifices, of course. You will have less time hanging out with friends. Maybe you will feel a little bit more tired. I felt sometimes lost, because you're doing this in silo as well. And what I'm really grateful for is the BARBRI tutors that are always there. I almost felt like my tutor was like learning coach, supporting coach. She was almost like my BARBRI therapist for SQE1. Like I could literally tell her, like I can't go on anymore. And she would find the words to keep it going.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. That leads nicely on to my next question. That is, do you have any tips for candidates who are thinking about balancing SQE study with their other obligations, whatever they may be? How do you look after your well-being, be it for the 40, 20 or 10-week course that you sign up for? So what did you do? Katerina, can you remember what you did? You were doing a lot alongside getting married and holding down your job. How did you look after yourself?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think it's good to be prepared and knowing what's ahead of you. If you know that, if you're prepared and dedicated and know that it's 40 weeks, they pass by so quickly. This happens so quickly. Like I've been there like a year and a half ago. It feels like it never happened, And as long as you remember that there will be an end point, that you will do it, you'll smash it. And I know that the BARBRI success rate is pretty high. I think it's higher than average, average, and the other providers perhaps more or less. So you have to be very self-aware and believe in yourself. There will be doubts, there will be ups and downs, but yeah, I think you need to stay open-minded and also secure some support from your friends and family. I think that this is also very important. Exercise, that was also one of the best things that I did for myself during this period of time. And yeah, believe in yourself. I think that was the key.
Great. Okay, thank you. Shava, how about you? How did you stay sane while you were studying on this course? How did you keep it going?
I definitely picked up a hobby. So I did a lot of painting. I got very into yoga, because I think it's also important to do something else alongside SQE, whatever that is, and just to have your space to do things that are just not law related. And I think I was quite disciplined with myself. So when I was studying, that was my study time. And when I was in my relaxation time, I was in my relaxation time. And I was very careful not to mix the two. Sometimes you can have a really good productive study day and you think, oh, I'll just do an extra hour and maybe I don't need to unwind a bit, but you really do. So you have to be really disciplined with yourself. And then importantly, when you just feel like you just want to relax the whole time, you kind of sometimes need to motivate yourself and say, it's very good to just want to chill all the time, but you also need to get the work done. So I'd say being really disciplined, having other things to do that also make you happy and keep you in good spirits. And I would also speak to people who had just done the SQE. So it's always good to get advice from people who've just gone through it, because they will totally know what you're going through, more so than people who've, for example, done the LPC, because it's just so different. You really wouldn't be able to compare them. So very often speaking to people who've just gone through it, getting their tips, getting their advice, even them just hearing, I passed, you'll pass, you've got this, is just, it does a lot for you. It just reminds you to keep a very positive mindset the entire time. Because if you go into it thinking, there's no way I can do this, you'll have a negative experience. If you think to yourself, I've got this, it's tough, it's challenging, but I know what to do, you will do it.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you. Looking back now, obviously you both got through, which is the key thing. Is there anything that you'd do differently thinking about your SQE1 journey? Katerina, come to you first.
Differently. For SQE1, probably not. I think I trusted the process completely. During those 40 weeks, some big events happened in my life, positive and very negative, unfortunately. And I thought, oh my God, that's going to impact my exam. I'm gonna fail. There's no way I'm going through something happened, right? But the truth being told, something happens all the time to all of us in life. We cannot hope for a beautiful and stress-free life. And To be honest, I'm sure Elisheva, like through the health issues as well, when you go through this and you think, oh my God, like this happened, this is so unfortunate. How am I gonna do this? Trust us both, it actually is possible. I would probably believe in myself a little bit more, be a little bit more confident, because when things don't go well, especially actually at the end of my SQE1 study, I was not really scoring well for FLK2. And one of my tutors, she said, maybe focus on FLK1 so that you at least score good, and then you just retake one exam. And it scared me so much. So I pushed so hard into both. I think I did the second part even better than the first one. So even if like this is for students who are going through this or will go through this, even if you're not doing well, which I did not, you can still do it. So it's all very, very possible.
Great. And Elisheva, how about you? Is there anything that you would do differently if you had to go through it again?
I totally agree with everything Kat said. I totally resonate and echo that. I think, yeah, totally just trust everything, that it all works out, that everything just does work out in the end. I think for me, I thought my FLK1 went terribly. So I think that kind of, I just stressed out so much between FLK1 and FLK2. I think, and also just afterwards, I totally thought I had failed. And then weirdly, I had done better in FLK1 than FLK2. So it's just, you'd never know. You just got to totally trust yourself. I think in terms of the revision, I wouldn't do anything differently. I totally lent into the new way of studying, because you really do need to like embrace a new way of studying for SQE. It's not like any other exam. So I totally went all in with the BARBRI method, and I totally trusted it. So I would say nothing on the studying front, just more on the mindset front, that once you've taken the exam, just trust yourself more, that it was okay, and that it would be okay regardless whether you passed or not, but just that you did the best you could, and that was okay. That's something I would have done just a bit differently if I could.
I think that's very reassuring to hear. Even the students that do very well and get through flying colours, even they feel terrible when sitting this exam, which is the kind of exam it is. Okay, well, we've talked mostly about SQE1. I want to briefly talk about SQE2. So Katerina, you've done SQE2 and you've got through the exam. How did you find that compared to your SQE1 journey? So what was SQE2 like for you?
Thanks for asking. The memories are still fresh, still there. I have to say that it's very, very different from SQE1. Completely two different sets of exams, completely different skills required. Of course, the knowledge of law is required, but also additional skills, like I'm sure everyone who checked it understands that there will be legal skills tested on the exam. So for me, I think, first of all, when I passed SQE1, I was pleasantly surprised. Of course, I understood that I can pass it, but you can never be so sure. So when I did it, I did not jump into SQE2 straight away. So I received my results, if I'm not mistaken, maybe around September 2023. And I think I started my SQE2 preparation in around January 2024, January, February. So there was a small gap. And there are a few recommendations that I would like to share. The first one is research what the SQE2 looks like, because SQE1 is a test. It's an MCT test that requires a different skill set, different brain functions for you to perform it. The pass rate is lower than for the SQE2. But the SQE2 requires a completely different set of skills. So you will be drafting, you'll be writing, you'll be applying law. And knowing law and rule of law and a big letter of law does not guarantee the correct application. So my next advice would probably be, where possible, not to have a bigger break between SQE1 and SQE2. So if you have an opportunity to sit one close to another, this is what I would change, because for me it was a break of around 6 months, and even more because I did the exam in July. So basically in July I stopped studying, and then again I started studying in January. I would do it quicker because the law memory is fresh, first of all, and secondly, there will be less legal changes in law that you will face on the exam, because law changes a lot. You will keep a track of the things that change. BARBRI provides the information about this. So does SRA. You can check what is the cutoff point for when the law was changed. But within 6 months, there is high chance that more changes will be implemented and introduced. And for me, it was like even the court time limits for the rulings in the magistrate's court. I think I was so confused. I was like, well, I remember a different thing. So yeah, well, if you have a smaller gap, a wider gap, it is still possible. It's still okay. You just need to maybe dedicate a little bit more time to revision. And BARBRI again provides access to certain types of materials, and you will still have your books. And since your memory is fresh, more or less, you will still be able to revise correctly. But this is just to keep in mind.
That's a really good tip.
For SQE2. Yeah.
It's interesting, Katerina, because I think it's the opposite of what the SRA intended. They intended that you do SQE1, do your training contract, and then do SQE2. But actually, lots of candidates mirror what you say. It's better to do the second exam quite soon after the first.
Okay. I am 100% sure, yeah. And just one small note, SQE1 preparation with BARBRI is different from SQE2 preparation with BARBRI. You would expect, you're like, oh, I've done this before, like they have the internal platform and my profile and everything. Absolutely not, because the profile, you will have a different system, different flexibility. SQE2 does not provide a flexibility that is provided for SQE1, because again, 2 different types of exams. You will have deadlines that you will have to submit your paper so that it's checked, so that you know how it is going for you. And I think knowing that you do not have this flexibility for the second exam, especially after having this flexibility for the first exam, is important.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. Different exam requires different kind of prep. SQE2 requires live feedback sessions, and then that means you will have fixed deadlines, so you have to be ready to work towards those deadlines. Thank you for raising that. It's really good as well. Elisheva, I'm not sure if you're there at the moment because your camera's gone off, but if you are there, I'm just wondering, you're currently balancing doing a training contract with your study for SQE2. I'm wondering how you're finding that. Oh, I think she may have dropped off the call. Okay, well, we've heard some very useful tips from Elisheva as well. And Katerina, thank you very much for giving us those insights into SQE2 as well. And thank you for answering the questions. If you stick around, I'm sure that the people in the audience will have some more questions for you at the end of this session. What I'd like to do now is hand over to Narissa, who can tell us a little bit more about how BARBRI can assist in meeting your individual learning needs. So if we could get the slides back on, thank you very much, and then move on to the next slide. Thank you, Narissa. I'll hand over to you to talk a little bit more about the programs. I've seen a lot of questions in the chat about how it works, what the payment schemes are. I think you can fill us in on all of that.
Sure. Thank you so much for that insightful discussion in regards to SQE1 and 2. So I'm going to be doing the SQE1 for the exams for July next year. So I'm on board with everyone else in terms of how frightening it can be. I'm going to take you through BARBRI and what we do to help students with their individual needs in terms of learning patterns. Next slide, please. So currently at the moment, BARBRI have 3 prep courses available that's tailored to suit your flexibility according to studies. The first course we have is 40 weeks that we've been discussing. This is our part-time course, and it's only a devotion of 10 to 12 hours per week. In regards to a focused part-time course, this is 20 weeks, and you just have to devote 20 hours per week to your study and devotion. And then we have a 10-week course, which is accelerated, that's full-time. This is usually for individuals who are not working full-time, but they've got more hours to devote to their studies. Now, all the 3 courses are the same in terms of content. The only difference would be the structure in terms of allocation of time and how much hours you're going to devote to your workload leading you up into your exams. Every student will be allocated with a personalized study plan. In your study plan, you will have access to all the course materials, which I'll explain a bit later on. And it gives you a functionality where you can access the material at any given time, and it feeds into your next activity. As the panelists were talking in regards to your studying patterns, if you're quite busy and you won't be available to study at specific time schedules, Those days can be blocked off, and the hours will reallocate to the next scheduling time, preparing you for your exams up until the next stage of when you need to take it. There'll also be bite-sized conservable content that you can access at any time as well on the actual given platform. Next slide, please. So in regards to the studying plan, what it would be included. So in regards to your studying plan, you would be allocated to a one-to-one personalized tutor. Our tutors are qualified. They have all the experience at least past 50 years. You can book them in for limited meetings. So if you do have any questions, your tutor will be there to assist you at any given need. You'd also have access to lecture slides. These do cover all the examination topics. The lectures will be on demand, so you can access this at any time. There's no given time schedule for that. You'd also have workshops that you can join with your colleagues that's studying with you, so you can form groups and teams. So that would also be accessible to you, as well as mock exams, and there'll be practice questions. We have around about 3,000 practice questions as part of our preparation. You can reset the practice questions as much as times as you like, and then you can also, practice and aim for your exams leading to the given schedule that you have put in place. In regards to your study plan, your tutor can look at your weakness and strengths, so at least you know where you're at and ways that you can improve. So this will be implemented on the actual platform. If anyone does have any disabilities, we can definitely accommodate you and suit your needs to make it tailored to fit your studying plans better. The next slide, please. So we're going to talk a bit about the flexibility of funding. So we do have flexibility in funding options available for you. So we have scholarships available. So if anyone's within the public sector scholarship, you would be eligible to get £600 off your fee in relation to the SQE1. We also do have essay scholarships from time to time, and this is regards to all courses available. It's usually in regards to a given topic. So if you're successful in the essay scholarship, you can have a fully sponsorship for your SQE1. You can have half the fees paid off your SQE1, and also you can pay at least £1,000 towards your fees, which is quite useful. We also partnership with various universities. So if BARBRI is in partnership with any university such as King's College, Queen Mary, Birkbeck University, as well as other lists, you can receive a discount off your SQE1 fees as well. We do have payment plans on schedule. So in regards to our 40-week course, the 20-week course, and 10-week course, there is flexibility to pay within 8 installments. You can have 2 installments of 4. If you are paying by the installment plan, there would be an admin fee extra of £149, as well as we've signed up with student loans such as LendWise and Kalana, so you can spread the cost within a longer duration as well as part of your study and preparation.
Thank you, Nerissa. And just in terms of the support available around your legal study, if we just go back to the last slide, BARBRI also offer one back and another one back, 2 back. You can just go back 2 slides. One forward. There we are. One forward. There we are. Perfect. We have a careers team. So if you don't yet have your qualifying work experience lined up, or even if you do, if you're interested in looking at different areas, maybe you want to move into a different sector, for example, we do offer very specific support for careers within the legal sector. And that ranges from getting your CV checked to having support in drafting cover letters, to lots of resources in different careers, and having one-on-one appointments with careers experts within the legal sector as well. So there's lots of opportunities to get support in terms of careers. But also, very importantly, you've heard from our panelists that this is a challenge and you need to be ready. We also have a lot of support available in terms of well-being, and that ranges from information about different kinds of well-being, right to the availability of one-on-one counselling, right to having mental health first aid is available. Like Nerissa said, you would all have access to a learning coach to help you on your journey. But if you feel you need anything more than that, BARBRI can help you with that as well. Thank you. We can go to the next slide now. Thank you. Back to you, Nerissa.
Sure. So I'll be talking a bit about the upcoming courses that we have available, depending on what exam you're taking. Very important, along the panelists, we're talking about time duration and also discipline in terms of when to decide of when to sit your exams. So our flexible 40 weeks, that is 10 to 12 hours per week of study and devotion. We currently have a course that's starting on Monday, the 30th of September. this is going to prepare you to sit the exams for July 2025. We also have recently started a complete package. So you can do the SQE 1 alongside your studies part-time, and then once completing the SQE 1, you can then move on to the SQE 2. We've currently got the accelerated course, which is a 10-week course. This is full-time, roughly about 40 hours per week. This starts on the 21st of October, preparing you for the exams for January next year. In terms of cost, for the flexible course, it's currently a fee of £3,299. For the complete package, this is the SQE 1 and 2 combined together. This is discounted at a fee of £5,499. For the accelerated course, which is for the exams for January next year, this is currently at a fee of £2,999. We're providing 10% discount off for all those that want to register by the 21st of October. Discount code has been plotted in the actual chat and also in the actual link, so you can get the discount off your fees if you're going to register early or anytime soon before that scheduled date.
Brilliant. Now, if we move on to the next slide. Right, thank you very much, Narissa. That's really helpful. Now we have some time left. We've got just under 15 minutes, and this is time for your questions. So I'm going to have a look through the chat and pick up on questions that pop up in there. So if you do have any questions, do pop them in there now, and I will pass them to the panelists. The first question, I think I'm going to come to, well, the first one that I've spotted, I think I'm going to come to you, Elishaba, first of all, relates to memorization of content. So it's a lot of material, 16 modules for SQE 1. Elishaba, how did you find the memorization of content? Did you find that you had to sit down and memorize everything? How did you go about remembering all the stuff that you needed?
Yeah, that's such a good question because there's just so much information. I would say that I was quite lucky that I used the BARBRI revision guide a lot, which kind of had the really condensed points of what you needed to know. And I left anything that was that I would really need to learn off by heart sort of more towards the end, because there's just no way you're going to remember that 20 weeks in advance. It's more something that you need to sort of like get your brain to know sort of as close to the exam as possible. I did print quite a lot of charts, some of them that BARBRI gave us from the study guide, and I printed them and stuck them on my wall. So a lot of the times I would just look at them and just, I honestly, I was in the exam and there was a question that needed a very specific percentage, and I had like remembered the table on my wall, and it was really helpful. So just doing things like that, getting your notes in order, but leaving sort of the hardcore deadlines and memorization right towards the end was something that really works for me.
Great, thank you. It's a great tip. Katerina, do you have any tips on memorization?
I agree with Alicia 100%. BARBRI triggers certain areas in your brain, visual, writing sometimes, or probably less, and speaking and memorization. I think it's perfect. I 100% trusted the process and it worked.
Brilliant, thank you. I just want to turn to SQE 2 for a moment, because there's a question about what happens if you fail one of the 16 exams. Do you have to pass all 16 individually or just the overall 16? So I'll answer that factual question, but perhaps ask both of you what that means in terms of how it feels getting ready for it, in your case, Elishaba, or Katerina, in your case, having sat it. So the factual answer is that you can fail individual assessments of those 16, but you have to get to the overall pass mark across all 16. So as long as you are good enough in the other ones, it's okay to fail one or two. But Katerina, what did that mean in terms of how it felt sitting this exam for you? I mean, what's the experience of that?
Yeah, it's so mentally challenging. 16 assessments. Yes, you're absolutely right. You can fail. It's good to know that if you got a question that you were like, oh my goodness, what is this? And you don't know the answer to this question, you can price that in and know, okay, if I fail this one, I'm okay. And it will not be every question, trust me. If you study and you know it, it's not absolutely possible that it's going to be like a lot of them. But then you start doubting yourself after the exam, you start overthinking, of course, and the time for waiting for the results is 4 months. So I guess it's good to know that some things can be failed. But what does not really help is knowing that if you fail more than you should have, then the whole thing is a failure, which I am not 100% certain is fair and correct from the assessment perspective. I can see the point, but yeah, that's unlike SQE1. You have to basically pass the whole thing. Otherwise, you will have to retake it all again, which is still okay. You have 3 attempts and it's no stress and no drama, but just you have to do it again. That's it.
Great, thank you for that. And Elishava, kind of linked to that, there's another question about the exam experience for SQE1, the fact that it's 5 hours per day. The factual question is there a break in the middle? Yes, there is. You get a 1 hour break in the middle. But can you remember how it felt sitting the exam in terms of the experience on the day? How did you feel? Could you concentrate to the very end? What's the process like on exam day for SQE1?
Oh, I just remember being so tired. It's really draining, and BARBRI do tell you that. So in the workshops, they give you really good practical advice about the day, which is when you're doing, for example, like any mocks or simulated exams, you should try and replicate the day as much as possible. So go somewhere about 2 weeks before FLK1 and try do 2 FLK1 exams and give yourself an hour break in the middle and just see what happens to your energy when it drops, what you need, that kind of thing. And that really helped for me to have done that before. So when I got to the exam, I was really tired, but I had reminded myself, I've sat here for 5 hours once before and I've been absolutely fine. I think also try and have a relaxing day before and after the exam days, because it's really, really draining. So I definitely did that for FLK1 and I still felt drained. But because I thought my FLK1 didn't go so well, I studied a lot between FLK1 and FLK2. So by the time I went into FLK2, I was really exhausted. I remember being about 20 questions into the first paper and just thinking, I don't have anything left to give.
Oh, no.
It's so many more questions. I just had to take it slow, reset, just refresh and say, whack so hard, just got to keep going. And in the end, it was absolutely fine. But it's also just remember that the days themselves are really draining. So prepare yourself day before, day after, and just let yourself crash when you need to.
That's really good advice, and also a good lesson in looking after yourself in the run-up to make sure that you're not absolutely exhausted on exam day. I'll come to you, Katsirina, now. There's been a question about working alongside SQE prep, and clearly you've been working the whole way through, I think, while you did your SQE exams. The question is it feasible? I suppose it's how did you find it? How much of a challenge was it to work full-time and study?
Yeah, it's a valid point. I think it depends on your job, on what you do. I've been working at Sterling Law for 6 years now. In September, actually, I started on my birthday 6 years ago, exactly. And I had flexibility. I could have scheduled calls a little bit later. I could have scheduled calls a little bit earlier. I was reliant on associates, on myself. It is totally feasible to do it at the same time as work. Of course, if your work is demanding you to work 12 hours a day, as I know some people that do that, maybe you should consider taking some time off or taking a longer course. I would certainly take time off before the exam. I think I took good 14 days or even more to fully dedicate and prepare for the main exam. But it's totally feasible to do at the same time as working and having a family as well, which I do.
Great, fantastic, thank you. Elishava, there's been a couple of questions about the fact that you mentioned that you'd studied English, and so you've come from a non-law background. Questions about whether you did any kind of conversion course before you did SQE, whether you came straight to SQE, and generally, how did you find coming to SQE from a non-law background?
Yeah, sure. Those are great questions. I did English and then I immediately did a law conversion. So I did the postgraduate diploma in law, the PGDL, which was really helpful for SQE because about 8 of those modules come up again. They don't let you get away with them. You've got to go through them again for SQE. So that was really useful. And I also did some paralegal experience. So I worked for about a year almost in the law firm I work at now in their commercial dispute resolution department. And that was actually really helpful. So any kind of paralegal experience or any legal experience has been really, really useful for SQE because it just helps you to understand things in context, not just the dispute resolution module, but even things like ethics of professional conduct or the legal services module. Those kind of things really, really gets you to understand things in practice. So for me, that was really, really useful. I would say the only sort of challenge was obviously coming from something like English, where you could study, 10 different books over 10 weeks, and then you'd only have to pick 2 to write on for your end of semester coursework. With SQE, you have to know absolutely everything for the exam. So it's very, very different. And I think that I just had to embrace a new way of studying. It wasn't just good enough to sort of, select what to study and what you couldn't study. You kind of had to know pretty much everything. So I definitely had to adopt a new way of studying and get myself used to also just not doing well for the beginning. Because if you come from a degree where you're used to doing quite well with things and you're used to being on top of it, and then you start studying the SQE, you've never done single best answer MCQs where you could sit there having an argument with yourself about which one is better than the other. And you look at your scores and you're like, yikes, what's this? You kind of need to get really ready at knowing that it's so normal, and it's actually good to not be perfectionist about it and to get things wrong. It's the best way to learn. And then, sort of by the end, I was kind of laughing in the real exam when I got a question. I had no idea what was going on. I was like, I knew this was going to happen, and that's absolutely fine. I'm just going to take an educated guess and I'm going to move on to the next question. So it's all about changing your mindset and embracing a new way of studying, but just know that it is possible, regardless of what degree you come from, what background you have, that you can smash it. Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Elisheva. Just one last practical question that I'll put to Narissa. It's regarding our 10-week course, the full-time course. I think the recommended daily study hours on that is 5 hours per day. So that would be 35 to 40 hours a week, wouldn't it, Narissa? Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you. All right. Well, I'm afraid that's all we have time for in terms of questions. Thank you all for posting some really great questions. And thank you for coming along. Thank you very much to the panelists as well, Katerina and Elisheva and Narissa. Fantastic to hear from you all. I'm going to hand back over to Tom, who's going to tell you about the networking.
Thanks very much for that, Emily, and thanks to the whole panel. It was a really, really interesting discussion. So if you found that useful, please do drop a message in the chat and say thank you to the panel this afternoon. We're now going to move across to the networking, which runs until 5:30 UK time. We're going to make our way across there. That's over in the expo. So I'm going to ask the speakers just to remain where they are for now. But if you're tuning in from wherever you might be, head over to the expo now. Get in there nice and early and reserve your spot, and then the speakers will be heading over very, very shortly. Just a reminder that the networking lasts for half an hour, so runs until 5:30, and we'll see you all over there very, very shortly.